welcome to episode 15 of Film Stop. Today we're going to go back to Bollywood, and we're going to do something interesting. We're going to sit and think of our top 10 directors that are still working today, which is a very important requirement for our list. And really just dive into why we think that those 10 directors deserve to be on those 10 spots. But before we do that, I want to make a quick public service announcement. In case you haven't noticed, weeks ago, there was a series that dropped on Netflix. Now, depending on the kind of content you consume on Netflix, you may or may not have been prompted to watch it. But I implore you to watch it and maybe give us a shout out, tell us what you think about it. The series I'm talking about is Delhi Crime. So this show is based on a Delhi gang rape case. This crime drama follows the Delhi police investigation into the finding of the men who perpetrated the crime. Now, I'm not going to lie, the series is extremely serious and it's extremely heavy. And at many points, it does get to you. But the reason why I say this is a public service announcement is because I believe everyone out there should watch it and just get a sort of sense of what happened. Now, I will say this, that the show is almost entirely from the perspective of the cops who are trying to investigate. And for those of you, again, who don't know, this is a true story. This happened in 2012 in Delhi, and specifically in the neighborhood of Munirka in South Delhi. And this series, or this show, is based on the case files that the director and the maker, Rishi Mehta, researched and interviewed a lot of people who were related to the case and developed. So the show follows Shefali Shah's character, who is the Commissioner of Police, DCP Vartika Chaturvedi, who is actually a real person. I'm not quite sure if that's her real name, but I will say this, that I'm baffled that Shefali Shah does not get more work. I don't know if she's that picky or if people just don't trust her with content, because right from Satya, I've never found a flaw in her performances. Never, ever. She amazed us with Dil Dhadakne Do. I will never forget that one scene where she's, stuffing herself with the piece of cake after being berated by Anil Kapoor's character in front of everyone. She has so much of a range, because if you watch this series, you really see a very different side of her. I don't want to give away too much, because even though this is a case that has been in the public domain for a while, the show really explores certain elements that have not been explored, at least in pop culture to this point, or media to this point. And it really, talking about media, it really dives into the effect that media had on the whole case and the proceedings and the political angle of things. But again, from a very investigational perspective, from the perspective of the cops. And I will say this, that, many times during the show, I believe it's 8 episodes, many times during the show, I was choked up. I was, feeling just aghast at the kind of things that happened and continue to happen. And then they reference other cases in the show, and it's just, if you have a weak stomach, then this is going to be a tough one to watch. But if there's anything you're ever going to watch that is heavy and is also entertaining, I'm not going to take that out of it, but is also informative, not educational, because it's not preachy, but it's informative, I think this should be it. And a bulk of the heavy lifting, of course, is done by the ensemble cast, which is brilliant. Again, Rasika Duggal shows up, who is mind-blowing, and I'm loving that she's getting so much work to do. I saw her in Mirzapur recently too. But more importantly, this is a very well written and directed show. And I think that, Rishi Mehta should take a bow for what he has achieved with this. I'm fairly certain that people are going to walk out or finish watching it and feel a certain way about the way the proceedings happened, and feel a certain way about the cops, feel a certain way about the case itself, about your own country. But at the end of the day, this is just a version of the story. And, while it's not telling you the entire story, you have to understand that, knowing a version is much better than not knowing anything. So definitely watch it, and let us know what you think. Of course, if you haven't done so by now, please like, share, subscribe, rate, review, comment. All of that helps. And of course, you can email us at filmstop.podcast@gmail.com. Okay, with that, let's move into the main piece of this episode, which is Bollywood's finest. So I've been wanting to do this segment for a very long time because, if you've been listening to any of my episodes up to this point, you probably already realize that I give a lot of credence and weight to directing, especially when I'm talking about movies and or any content where I feel like it was, whether it was well made or not, I feel like a lot of the responsibility lies on the shoulders of a director. So with this episode, what I want to do is really talk about some of the finest directors working in Bollywood today. And before we jump into that, let me take a step back and tell you why I have not done a Bollywood-centric episode in a couple of episodes, actually, to this point. The reason being, I do not want to watch Kalank. I do not want to watch Student of the Year 2. These are movies that do not excite me and clearly did not excite a lot of people. And I would rather consume, there's so much content out there that I would rather consume content that is good and not being talked about enough, or like I said, Delhi Crime or Mirzapur or Made in Heaven, and talk about those rather than waste my time on, and your time on, movies that are clearly, enough people are reviewing these movies out there to tell you that they're not good movies. That said, when Kalank comes out on video on demand, I will do a quick review of the movie. So hopefully that answers your question. I have gotten a couple of questions about why I haven't done more Bollywood stuff, and hopefully that answers that. Now, directors. What do I mean by a director? I'm sure that most of you guys are rolling your eyes right now because you know what a director does. But for those who, however few, may not know what a director does, a director for, let's say, for TV and for film, is basically the captain of the ship. That is the most common sort of analogy that is used out there. A director brings together the vision that is going to ultimately be portrayed on the big screen or on the small screen. So they say that a movie is rewritten many times during its, production or during its lifespan. It's written, of course, when it's written. The script is written. It's rewritten when it's performed by certain actors. It's again rewritten when it's directed and captured by the cinematographer in a certain way. And then it's rewritten when it's edited by the editor in a certain way. The only common theme while all of this is happening is a director. Now, some directors like to write their own content, some directors don't, and we'll talk about our list and point out the ones who do like to write their own content and the ones who don't. Actually, they all probably like to write their content, but some of them are more open to working with other written content. The way a director sort of shapes a movie is that he or she takes what's on the text. Of course, if they've written it, they've probably also written it with that sense of direction as to what the vision needs to be. But they usually take what's written the text and have a sense of how they want to narrate the story. If you've ever heard the term or phrase unreliable narrator, that's coined because, you can't really trust the story the narrator is saying because they're saying it in their own way. In the same sense, a director controls the narrative. They are the ones that are telling the story. So in a similar sense, a director can take a bad script and make it amazing in just the way they tell it. Similarly, they can take a good script and make it a complete dud, again, in the way they say it. They control all the different departments. Now, more logistically speaking, all departments report to the director. Now, this can be from the costumes as to why someone would be wearing a certain palette of colors in a certain scene. For example, in Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna, Karan Johar wanted to film an entire song in certain color palettes, so he made sure both the costume and the production designers had the set pieces and the costumes matching those color palettes. Now, that's coming from the director's vision. It's not from anywhere else. And those departments work towards realizing that vision. And similarly for the director of photography, when they are figuring out how a shot needs to be composed, where the lights need to go, what it needs to look like, what the color palettes need to be again, the director is the one who calls the shots. So hopefully that gives you a sense of what a director does and what their responsibility is. And so that, to me, that's why they are such an important part of what I'm watching. And that's why when I talk about a movie or review a movie, I am often going back to the director. And a lot of the times, actually, before I even watch the movie, I'm wondering whether or not I want to watch it. I look at the director and I'll see what other stuff they've done. And based on that, I'll make a decision if I want to watch or not. Because most directors, especially the ones we're going to talk about, have their own signature style. And I think that that's what distinguishes a good director from a mediocre or even bad director. All right, so before we dive into our list, let's lay out some ground rules. These are just 3 simple rules that I have followed to make this list. 1, these have to be directors who have had a movie release in the past 4 years. Now, I know that I'm going to, skip a few names that might rile up a couple of you guys out there because I just don't think that they've made a movie in the past 4 years, and that's why that just doesn't qualify them in my list of directors working today. Now, that does not mean that they're not working today. I'm just saying that for the purposes of this list, I am trying to limit it to directors who've made a movie in the past 4 years. The next thing. The director has to have made at least 3 movies that have come out and the audiences have had access to. Now, it does not mean that I have had to have watched all 3. They just have had to have released 3 movies. I will say this, that I have seen 3 movies of each of these directors, but just to clarify that. And then the third point, which I think is important, mainly because the list is so skewed to Hindi. We all know that regional cinema in India is very strong, and I will never take away the impact on cinema that South Indian movies have in India. But for this list, again, I am not considering South Indian directors. I will mention directors that I believe are auteurs and are brilliant at their craft, but not in the top 10 list. Okay, with that, let's start with number 10. So number 10 for me is Abhishek Chaubey. Abhishek Chaubey is a fairly newer director. He's made Ishqiya, he's made Ded Ishqiya, he's made Urta Punjab and Sonchiriya. Now, I have not watched Sonchiriya, but I've seen the other 3 movies, and the reason why he makes this list is very simple. He has a very, very strong signature style. He has a very strong language that he has command over. of course, most of the directors on this list are going to be very strong at their craft, but he specifically has a very distinct style, and it's not a shitty style. That's why he makes it to this list. He tells stories in a very fascinating way. He builds very fascinating characters and worlds, and very nuanced character arcs. Which brings me to the next point that I was going to make, which is he also writes his own stories. Now, that's not a necessity for this list, but I think it helps him in the process of sort of putting out a vision that is coherent and consistent with the world that he's building. If you haven't seen any of those 3 movies, actually 4 movies, I have only heard good things about Sonchuriya. I haven't seen it yet. But if you haven't seen the other 3 movies, I implore you to check them out. You will get a taste of humor. All 3 of them are, they have this quirky humor. They also are very dark. Urta Punjab gets very, very dark. But I think that you will notice a flair for action, a flair for sort of building drama with the comedy. He kind of thrives in these heartland stories, and that's good. I think he has again, going back to his style, I think he sticks to his style, and I'm curious what he'll do next. I'm always excited about his stuff. All right, so moving to number 9. And number 9 is going to be one that is controversial. So I'm going to say number 9 is Karan Johar. A couple of reasons why. Karan Johar is a very, very strong director in the sense that he has a very strong control on the drama that he is trying to build. I'll take the simple example of Student of the Year, right? For most of you out there who have watched Student of the Year, I'm sure you agree with me when I say that it's not realistic. Almost, maybe My Name is Khan, but even that is a little bit of an exaggeration. Almost no Karan Johar movie is a realistic piece of cinema. But he knows how to tell a story. He knows how to portray his characters. He knows how to build drama and build intrigue around the drama. Whether you take his first movie, Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, or Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, or My Name is Khan, or Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna, or Student of the Year, all of his movies have grandeur. They have larger-than-life characters. They have larger-than-life scenes and settings and just these story arcs, but they're all grounded in really good drama. So I think that he is underrated for the control of that genre that he has. And I think that there's very few directors on my list who control a genre. I think in this list, Karan Johar controls the drama genre. He, in many ways, to me, is like the new age Yash Chopra. And, not to overlook the fact that he has built Dharma Productions as a producer, too. He's on this list also because of his sense of cinema, and barring Kalank and Student of the Year 2, which are both duds, I think that he has a very strong understanding of what works and what doesn't work, and he calibrates his movies to it very well. That's why he gets a place on my list. Number 8 is Meghna Gulzar, so the first female entrant to this list, but nonetheless, she is a master storyteller, and she has been on this list, my top 10 list, for a very long time. I'm one of those few people who loves Filhal, which was, I think, her first movie. But then, of course, she made Talwar, which is, again, just a brilliantly written and directed movie, which led to Razi, which is, again, a great movie. Not necessarily one of my favorites of hers, but was deeply loved by everyone. And, of course, you cannot question her control on her craft. She is very interesting. I think she does a very good job at building intense scenes. I think or tension in scenes. I think that's a better way of putting it. You can cut the tension with a knife when, in her movies, whether it was Filhal, which had its own version of tension, or it was Talwar. She has a very unique perspective, and she has a very good sense of how to build the tension. One of the things that is, I think, very unique to Meghna Gulzar is that she is rhythmic in her storytelling, and she also writes her own content. But I think you can see if you go back to Talwar or you watch Razi a second time, you can see a rhythm that she's going with, and she's very consciously foreshadowing and building towards things, and letting the spatial and musical, audio and visual, speak to those rhythms. Whether it's the fact that Alia Bhatt's character in Razi goes from this girl who almost gets run over by a car trying to protect a squirrel at the beginning, and then changes into this person who shoots and takes alive or runs over a person with a jeep towards the end. She is constantly building these arcs, and whether they're minor or major, she's constantly closing, starting a new one, closing it, starting a new one, closing it, and that's very intriguing to me as a rhythm. Okay, so that's number 8. Number 7 is Sanjay Leela Bhansali. So Sanjay Leela Bhansali is a curious one for me because I have immense respect for him. I think that he demands the respect that he has garnered over the years. He has gone through a lot of shit trying to get his movies to release. I'm not even going to get into the whole Padmavati and Padmavat fiasco. I think it's shameful as a country that art has to go through such a rigmarole to be able to be expressed to audiences. That's a separate topic, but I have a lot of respect for Sanjay Leela Bhansali. But have I enjoyed all his movies? No. Actually, I haven't enjoyed any of his latest movies as much. Now, I think that, whether it's Ram Leela or Bajirao Mastani or Padmavat, I think that he has a very strong sense of, again, I'm going to grandeur, but more like epics. He knows how to build a frame. He knows how to compose visually and aesthetically a frame. He knows what each sort of inch of his screen needs to look like in terms of portraying what his vision is, and he is very particular and meticulous about it. But to me, where he kind of lets that overpower, or the side of storytelling that he lets that overpower, is the script itself. I think he kind of gets so lost in building that meticulous visual feast that he gets lost in the story, or his story gets lost in that, and that to me is very saddening, because he makes beautiful movies, but they're boring as hell sometimes. And I know that a lot of people love Padmavat and love Bajirao Mastani, but be honest, how many times are you going to go back to that movie? You're going to watch it once. It's kind of like eating a really heavy meal, and really decadent meal, greasy as hell, really, really bad for you, high calories, eating it, but then feeling shitty about it and not wanting to go back to it. That's what I feel like with Sanjay Leela Bhansali movies. And it's funny because he started off with the Khamoshi and Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, and somewhere post that, I think Devdas was when that tipping point happened, where he just kind of went from being a storyteller to a more of a painter, or I wouldn't say artist, but I guess a painter on a canvas rather than a storyteller who is as much invested in conveying and entertaining you as a member of the audience as he is or she is in portraying a vision of beauty and aesthetics to you. So that's my that's my piece on Sanjay Leela Bhansali. But I do think that he earns a spot on this list because of everything that I started off with, which is high respect for him. And again, like Karan Johar, he controls this genre of just historic epics. He's built that for himself, and he controls it, and he does it brilliantly. Okay, so now moving to number 6. Number 6 is the complete opposite of Sanjay Leela Bhansali. Number 6 is Dibakar Banerjee for me. He started off with Love, Sex or Dhoka. He went down the path of Oi Lucky Lucky Oi, and then he did Shanghai. He made Detective Byomkesh Bakshi, and I kid you not, I don't think I've seen a better graph of direction from any other director on this list. Because if you think of it, if you've seen all of these movies that I've just stated, they're all opposite from each other. Love, Sex and Dhoka is a smaller budget, very niche sort of indie film. Of course, Oi Lucky Lucky Oi is an indie film, but it's also very it's a dark comedy that is, in comparison to Love, Sex or Dhoka, has little less of the drama and more of the quirkiness. And then the third one, which would goes to Shanghai, is this heavy crime thriller that is entirely social in its message. And then you pivot to a complete fantasy / murder mystery, which is Detective Byomkesh Bakshi, with immense world building, which I've still to see a better sense of world building and character building in a murder mystery movie in India, as he showed with Detective Byomkesh Bakshi, and maybe just because of that movie, he earns a spot on my list. He's very interesting too, because the way Dibakar Banerjee functions, I think, is that he finds a lot of character in the setting where the movie is being placed. So if you consider Oi Lucky Lucky Oi, it's very Delhi in its fabric, in its nature. If you consider Shanghai, it's very different, because it's obviously Mumbai, and it's going towards that one statement that Mumbai ko Shanghai banayenge hum, and all of that stuff. But it's, again, the thread of the location, the region, matters greatly for him. And then you look at Detective Byomkesh Bakshi, which is entirely based in Kolkata. The fabric of that movie is defined by Kolkata, which I really appreciate, because it brings in that meticulousness that tells me that the director cares that much more. The difference between him and Sanjay Leela Bhansali doing the same thing is that, he also invests in the story and the, I won't say hook, but basically the edge of the seat, sort of holding you, keeping you entertained and interested and intrigued, much better than I think Sanjay Leela Bhansali does. That's why he is a step higher in my list. So that's number 6. Number 5 is, I think, very similar to Dibakar Banerjee, but I think he is such a stalwart and he is such a avant-garde filmmaker in India that he earns a higher spot than Dibakar Banerjee. Anurag Kashyap. So many say that Anurag Kashyap is pretty much the father of independent art house film in India. I think that's great. I think that's a good title. I just don't think that he should be wearing that. I think that goes to someone like a Shyam Benegal or even Mahesh Bhatt in the 80s. I think that there's a lot of directors or even Ketan Mehta, I think there's a lot of directors who've done that before. What I believe Anurag Kashyap brought into the forefront was a lot of irreverence. He brought in boldness. He brought in the ability to tell stories no matter what the consequences. I mean, listen, guys, his first movie never even got released. Panch has never been released. So if you haven't seen the movie, please go back and watch it because it still holds up. It's still brilliant. It's on YouTube, but it never saw the light of day in theaters. And that's the kind of director he is. You know, if he believes in a story, if he believes in a narrative, he will go to enormous and ridiculous lengths to make it. And that's why I think he's so passionate about it, and that's why his stories come across as his character, which is very passionate, very heated, and very raring to go, and in your face. So Anurag Kashyap came into obviously the foray with Black Friday because that was his first, proper release. But then, to me, Anurag Kashyap came into his own being with Dev D, because until I'd seen Dev D, I kind of had a sense of the kind of films he would make, and I felt like, you know what, he's going to give me more of the same. Panch and Black Friday had a very similar tone to me, and when I got Dev D, I was shocked, taken aback. I fell in love with the movie all at the same time, just because he took a concept that is so overdone. I mean, Sanjay Leela Bhansali in this list has done the same thing. He has taken the same story and narrated it, but Anurag Kashyap took it and he made it his. He made it unique. He made it, again, irreverent. He made it relevant. To people like me who at the time were very young when watching it and were greatly impacted by his style of storytelling. Of course, I love Amit Trivedi, and the fact that he collaborates with him on every movie is pure gold for me. But I'm not even bringing that into consideration here. Let's talk about the other movies that he's made. I mean, you talk about Ugly, you talk about The Girl in the Yellow Boots. He has always given us very intimate and strongly gut-punching stories, and he thrives in that. Now, the one time he went out of that zone, he did Bombay Velvet. Whatever the reason being, the movie was not coherent. It was not a Anurag Kashyap movie. I think that in the economics of the movie, he kind of lost his own style. He lost his own voice, and I don't blame him for that. Everyone is forgiven a couple mistakes, and I think that was a mistake, and maybe if he would have done it differently, maybe it would have been better. But then he came back with Raman Raghav 2.0, which is why we love Anurag Kashyap. And that movie, whether you love it or you hate it, it pulls out a very visceral reaction from you, and I think that's what he was going for. So enough said on Anurag Kashyap, but I think that all of those things make him a very worthy recipient of this number 5 position on my list. Okay, so we've done, I'm just going to recap because we're halfway there. We started with Abhishek Chaubey at number 10. We went to Karan Johar at number 9. We went to then Meghna Gulzar at number 8. And number 7 was Sanjay Leela Bhansali. Number 6 was Dibakar Banerjee. And number 5 was Anurag Kashyap. Okay. Number 4 is a director that I think most of you would have, well, most critics at least would have at the number 1 spot, which is Rajkumar Hirani. So here's my thing with Rajkumar Hirani. I like the movies he's made. I really do. I still love Munna Bhai MBBS. I love Lagero Munna Bhai. I love Three Idiots. But I think that he became formulaic after the third one. I kind of sort of enjoyed PK. I really didn't enjoy Sanju that much. It just felt like a very whitewashed version of the story. And I think that, his style of storytelling has maybe become stale. And he needs to figure out a way to reinvent himself. The reason I say this is that his frequent collaborator, Abhijat Joshi, has defined the formula many times. So I have watched at least 2 or 3 interviews where Abhijat Joshi goes into great depths about how they write. And one of the things that they do is they for every scene that they write, they try to make sure that each scene has a level of, either it either makes you laugh, cry, angry, one of those three. And that's good. I think that works. But, just because something works, and is overdone, it kind of becomes a assembly line of sorts to me. So that's why I go back to the stale part, which is he's not trying to reinvent himself. He's not trying to tell something that is supremely challenging. And the one time that I mean, recently he did try to do that with Sanju. I just feel like that didn't hit the mark for me. And I'm not saying that, again, I just mentioned Anurag Kashyap failed with Bombay Velvet. Rajkumar Hirani did not fail with Sanju. Sanju did really well. But in my books, that was probably his worst movie to date. And it's about time he reinvents himself. That said, he's at number 4 because he is still a brilliant director. He has complete control on his audiences. It's almost as if he hypnotizes you when you're watching his movie, because you kind of are at his beck and call. He asks you to laugh, you will laugh. He asks you to cry, you will cry. He asks you to get angry, you will get angry. And that's great. You see that flair is so unique to him, and I'm so grateful that he's given us movies like Munna Bhai MBBS, Lagero Munna Bhai, and of course 3 Idiots. He always has a very strong social message, but it's never boring. It's never boring. Even with Sanju, it was boring. It was just something we've seen before, but and I don't think he challenged himself with really taking a more of a neutral stance or more of a outsider's approach on the story. Whatever, we're not going to dive into the nitty-gritties of Sanju, but rest assured, I think that he's a great director, and I'm very excited to see what he does next, barring the sexual misconduct allegations that are unproven. There are still allegations, but what I don't know about, I'm not going to judge him on, and that's for here's the thing. He has allegedly done something bad. He should pay for it, and he will pay for it. But I, in this very moment, am judging his art and not himself. So when we talk about him, we can judge him all we want, but just judging his art, that's what I believe. Okay, number 3 is Shujit Sarkar. Now, he was going to show up on this list at some point, and it's only fitting that he shows up in the top 3. He is again an auteur filmmaker. He has made movies that have made you laugh, made you cry. Again, like Rajkumar Hirani, but his movies are reinventing. He reinvents himself with every movie he makes. So whether it was Yahan, which was based in Kashmir, or it was Piku, which was based on constipation, or it was October, which was based on death and love and all of the feelings and emotions in between. And who can forget Pink? Some say he ghost directed it. I don't know what he did or didn't do, but he for sure was a producer and a very strong voice behind that movie. And I love that movie. His frequent collaborator, who is Juhi Chaturvedi, is also a very strong part of his style, which is this brilliant flair on dialogue, brilliant flair on giving characters these bubbles to exist in. And it's almost, the one thing that is consistent with all his movies is that there is a journey of some sort that is involved. Whether it's a actual physical journey from point A to point B, or if it is a more metaphysical or mental journey from point A within to point B within. He always gives each of his characters, no matter how small or big, that bubble to thrive within. And I immensely respect that. I have to imagine that he takes what's on paper and elevates it with the kind of antics that his movies and his characters go through. So by antics, I mean, it's one thing having a funny scene written on piece of paper. It's a whole nother thing improvising that scene and elevating it from the page. And I think that I've seen enough of his makings to know the way he talks with his actors, the way he brings that quirk out of them. I just feel like he's such a innovative filmmaker, and I don't think I've used that word to this point for any other filmmaker. I just very strongly believe in his art. And the funny thing is, this isn't even something that he wanted to do all his life. He wanted to be a soccer player. So I kind of don't understand how he's so gifted as a filmmaker without having the strong passion for it that the others on this list do. Speaking of innovation, I mean, look at the fact that he went from a Vicky donor to a Madras cafe, and then to a Piku and a Pink. There is no genre that he is loyal to, and I love that about him. It keeps me excited, keeps me guessing as to what he's going to do next, and it's almost as if whatever he does next, I know he's going to, knock it out of the park. I don't think there's a single movie of his that has disappointed me. Yeah, I don't think so. And that's, hats off to him for being able to do that. Number 2 is another female entrant, and one that I absolutely adore and love, Zoya Akhtar. Zoya is one that I've already spoken quite a bit about. I've spoken about her in our first episode for Gully Boy. I've spoken about her with Made in Heaven. But she, just like Srijit Sarkar, has never given me a movie that has disappointed me. She made Luck by Chance, which till date is one of my favorite movies, and if you haven't heard that episode, please go back and listen to the second episode, which is my top 10 films. But that movie still exists in my top 10. She has given us Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, she has given us Dil Dhadakne Do, she has given us now Gully Boy, which I believe is a movie that comes once in a lifetime and brings about a revolution of sorts. Zoya Akhtar, there's so much to say about her, but I think the most unique thing to her is that she loves her characters, and you can see that by the amount of love and care and attention she gives in building each one of their arcs. I have said similar things about other people in this list, but let's break down movies, right? For example, Dil Dhadakne Do is an ensemble. Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara is an ensemble. Luck by Chance, some will say, is Farhan Akhtar's story or Konkona Sen's story, but it's as much everyone else's, Rishi Kapoor, even Hrithik Roshan's story to an extent. And then, of course, Gully Boy. It's as much Alia Bhatt's story as it is Ranveer Singh's story. It's as much Ranveer Singh's mother's story as it is Ranveer Singh's father's story. Or it's as much MC Sher's story as it is the friend who is stealing cars and selling weed for a living. She has the ability, this crazy ability, to give each character in her storyline, or in her story, a storyline, and each character a reason to exist in that world. Why are they in that scene? Why are they in this movie? She, I think, is one of those directors who can make an expositional character also seem incredibly important for the movie. And that, to me, is a talent that none of these other guys have. I mean, they all have the ability to, place the camera at the right place. They all have the ability to make you, feel the emotions. They all have the ability to entertain you in some way, shape, or form. She has the ability to give each person in her movie a reason for being there. And I think that's immensely important. Well, now we're at the top of our list, at the number 1 position. But, you know what? Before I go there, I want to mention some names that have not made it to this list, and I know you're going to question why they haven't, but I'll give you a quick insight on why they haven't. So I'm going to start with a couple of female directors that I hugely respect and admire. Rima Kakti, Gauri Shinde, Nandita Das, Meera Nair. Now, Nandita Das, I think, has only made 2 movies. That's why she's not on there. Rima Kakti is a good director. I love Talash. But her other 2 films are not as exciting for me. But, that said, she's a great writer, frequent collaborator with Zoya Akhtar, and I'm excited to see what she does next. Meera Nair, of course, she's a brilliant director, but I don't think she's made a movie in the past 4 years. I love The Namesake, but I want her to do more stuff. And then, of course, Gauri Shinde, I think she's a great director too, but she just hasn't made a 3rd movie yet, so she doesn't fall into that bracket of consideration. Then we have a couple other male directors. I'm going to start with Vishal Bhardwaj, who started off with some great Shakespearean adaptations. You think of Maqbool, you think of Omkara or Heather, even I actually really enjoyed Saat Khun Maaf too, even though that's not a Shakespearean adaptation. I do think that he has not been able to get out of a slump post Matru Ki Bijli Ka Mandola. He made some mistakes with Rangoon, was not as exciting with Pataka. I think that, he has immense talent there. I just feel like he maybe needs to take a step back and kind of reinvent himself in certain ways. And talking about reinvention, Mr. Imtiaz Ali needs to reinvent himself. He is a master storyteller when it comes to love. I loved Jab We Met. It's one of my favorites even now. I love Sochana Tha, Love Aajkal, Rockstar. But then I felt like he started repeating himself with Tamasha, and he started, further sort of repeating and then also getting confused and, lost in the superstardom with When Harry Met Sejal. It just, he's been one that has greatly disappointed me with his past 2 movies, and I know Tamasha is loved by a lot of people out there, but I have my reasons for disliking it, and at another time, another forum, I will be happy to discuss that. A couple other directors that I don't have on this list. Mani Ratnam. Again, he's not done a Hindi movie in the past 4 years, and I hate to say it, but he's not on this list. Ashutosh Govarkar, who I want him to make better movies than a Mohenjo-daro and a What's Your Rashi, but he just keeps disappointing, and there's so much there talent-wise that it just makes me sad. It makes my heart break every time he does that. I miss Farhan Akhtar. He hasn't made a movie in the past 4 years, but I do believe that he is one of the best directors out there in India, if he would only get back to direction, which I think is his best talent. I had promised that I would mention a few South Indian directors that, of course I mentioned Mani Ratnam, but directors that I feel are, again, auteurs, are directors who have a very strong grasp on their craft. I love S.S. Rajamouli, I love Shankar, Priyadarshan. I wish Priyadarshan would make more movies in the north than he does. And then there are a couple other directors that are up and coming that, just need more love and affection. I think Bijoy Nambiar, Ali Abbas Zafar, Neeraj Pandey. He's not up and coming. He's pretty well established, but I think they all could sort of do a little better with the kind of stories they tell, and maybe not get trapped into telling what works. Both with Ali Abbas Zafar and Neeraj Pandey, we're seeing them repeating, and I don't want that to happen because they're very talented. And then lastly, in the special considerations list, I have Anand L. Rai, who I think has made some of the best movies in the past decade or so, with Ranjana and Tanu Weds Manu Returns. He, I think, got too weighed down by the stardom of Shah Rukh Khan, which is not the first person on this list who has done. I mean, Imtiaz Ali with When Harry Met Sejal had the same problem. I just feel like Anand L. Rai needs to come out of that zero slump and win us back. I know he will be able to. He's a brilliant producer too. I just want him to do something that is him more than the superstar that he's catering to. Okay, I know that was a very long list of special considerations, but we're back on our list, our main list, and our number one spot. Our number one spot goes to my favorite director currently working in the Indian film industry, Sriram Raghavan. Okay, here's why he is on this list. There is literally no one in India, and I actually would say, like, maybe even compare him to certain Western directors. Not to say that Indian directors in general are not as good as Western directors. I'm just saying, like, his command on the thriller genre is so strong that it baffles me that he does not miss a beat with his movies. Of course, Agent Vinod, again, going back to my earlier point, everyone is forgiven a mistake. Agent Vinod was a mistake. He did what these other directors have done too, which is cater to the stardom instead of, catering to the story. But he came back. Oh my God, he came back so strong with Andhadhun, and even before that with Badlapur. Whether it's Ek Hasina Thi, Johnny Gaddar, Badlapur, or Andhadhun, his movies are insanely rewatchable, and he gets the best out of everyone, every department. He doesn't build epic sets. He doesn't build epic scenes. Actually, he doesn't have lovable characters. He doesn't have tear-jerking drama, but he has a very strong flair on quirk. He has a very strong flair of narrating a story in a very delicate way. Kind of, it's, watching his movies is like eating really good food with chopsticks. It's enjoying really good food with chopsticks, where you're not only enjoying the fact that the food is so delicious, but you're also enjoying in the delivery method of the food into your mouth, and you're proud of the way you're delivering it in your mouth. I don't know if that makes sense, but what I'm trying to say is that when you eat sushi with chopsticks, especially if you're someone like me who is not very good at eating sushi with chopsticks, trust me, there's a point here. You are doubly proud, especially when the sushi is really tasty. That's his movies. I mean, you make an effort from your end to watch the movie and understand it. The movie itself is very entertaining, and it gives you some back, and by the end of it, you have like double the output of the input that you're putting in. It's a very engineering way to explain this, but I hope you follow. And I am beyond excited every time his movie is about to come out, and I just need to see a poster. I don't even need to see a trailer. I'm already in the theater ready to watch the movie. Okay, so that's it. That's my top 10 list, and I hope you agree, or even if you disagree, let me know what you think. Let me know who your top 3 or top 10 directors are. You already know that you can reach me on my email, which is filmstop.podcast@gmail.com. But of course, follow us on Facebook and comment on our posts, or tweet, or share our episodes. I'm always excited to listen to feedback and your thoughts, and that's the whole point of the show. Speaking of, next week, we're going to have a panel again, and this time the panel is going to be talking about John Wick. So in case you don't know, John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum, is coming out May 17th, and we will be reviewing and analyzing the movie as soon as it's out. So, of course, you are invited, and I really do hope you check out that episode. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you did, please like, share, subscribe, Please rate and review. All of that matters. No matter where you're getting this feed, I'm sure you can do it. Thanks, guys, for sticking with me on this almost hour-long episode. I truly appreciate it. As always, catch you next time. Bye.